So we've discussed the Majestic class as a whole, and we've talked about the career of the HMS Majestic. Today, let's talk about one of her sisters, the Caesar. Like her sister, the Majestic, the Caesar was a Majestic-class pre-Dreadnought battleship serving with the Royal Navy. She was launched from the Portsmouth Drydock on September 2nd, 1896, and commissioned on January 13th, 1898, into the Mediterranean Fleet. However, she initially served for those first few months in the Channel Fleet before officially transferring over to the Mediterranean. When she arrived in the Mediterranean, she immediately had her first refit, stopping off in Sicily and having some of her systems modified and upgraded before serving with the Mediterranean Fleet for a few years. In 1903, she was moved from the Mediterranean Fleet back home to serve with the Channel Fleet, and would continue serving with the Channel Fleet until it was reorganized to be the Atlantic Fleet, where then she would serve with the Atlantic Fleet for a few years before being moved back to the Channel Fleet, which was originally the home fleet. It's also worth noting that when she was moved from the Mediterranean Fleet to the Channel Fleet, that was actually done specifically to relieve her sister ship, the Majestic, which was being moved to another fleet and left an opening for a flagship. During that time, she served as the flagship of the Channel Fleet and then the Atlantic Fleet before being moved back to the Channel Fleet to serve as a second flagship. On June 3rd, 1905, she suffered a collision, colliding with the bark Afghanistan, which significantly damaged the Caesar. This damage actually knocked off one of her bridge wings and required her to go in to get a pretty substantial list of repairs. After those repairs, she was returned to the Atlantic Fleet, where she would serve until her next collision. On January 16th, 1911, she collided with the bark Excelsior while sailing through fog. Now, this was far less damaging, leaving both ships relatively undamaged, and neither ship needed significant repairs, but it's notable because it was a collision. Shortly thereafter, she was moved to the home fleet, but everything changed when the First World War broke out. Like her sister, she was moved to the English Channel to cover the British Expeditionary Force as it moved from Great Britain over to France to serve on the Western Front. However, shortly after that, she was moved to Bermuda, where she would end up waiting out most of the war as part of the Bermuda Squadron, serving in the middle of the Atlantic and going on regular patrols, but never really seeing any action. During this time, she became the last operational pre-Dreadnought battleship within the Royal Navy, with all of her sisters having been retired, or in the case of the Majestic, sunk. And by retired, I actually mean converted to fill other roles. Many of them were still around at this time, but they were doing something else. And that would eventually be what happens to the Caesar. In September of 1918, near the end of the war, she was refitted to serve as a depot ship. Many of her combat facilities were removed to be replaced with large storage rooms and recreational areas for off-duty soldiers and sailors. After which she was moved to the Mediterranean, where she was ported in Egypt, where she would fill out her role as a depot ship for the remainder of the war. In 1919, following the end of the war, she transited the Dardanelles and joined the Black Sea Fleet, where she served fighting the Bolsheviks in the Russian Revolution. However, by 1920, when she returned to the United Kingdom, she was deemed too old to remain in service and was sold to a British firm for scrapping, which in turn sold her to a German firm for scrapping, so she was towed to Germany, where she would be dismantled. So a bit of irony there, this ship, which was meant to face off against German battleships, would ultimately be dismantled by the Germans. But that ends the story of the HMS Caesar, one of the Majestic-class battleships serving in the Royal Navy from the 1890s all the way through to the early 20s. If you'd like to learn more about the Majestic class or any of her sisters, I'll leave a link up here to a playlist I'm building all about the Majestic class of battleships, including a video breaking down the technical specifications of this class, as well as videos on the lives and careers of her sister ships. And if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Barbettes and Binnacles, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.